Welcome to the last of our webinars for our fifth year of doing this. It's our 188th webinar we've done so far in this series, and we should start getting to be a little bit better at this than what we are. But that's the way it goes. We're not too professional at these things, right? But we're having a good time, and this is. We have a special guest this time, and we often do a lot of technical things, and we chat about in-depth user profiles and how to read data and analyze things and understand decelerations and all sorts of things. But usually 4 or 5 times a year, I just love to have some guests on with us and talk about their experiences and different parts of motorsports. And of course, the data topics as well, obviously, and that's what we're going to have today. We're going to have we have Emy Kissick is joining us here today. She's the 2024 Mazda Spec MX-5 Shootout winner, one of, and she'll talk more about that here in just a moment. And the interesting thing to me about this is she is local to me. We're fairly actually far apart right now, right? I'm in the Seattle, the Western Washington side of the world, and she's in Indianapolis right now. But there's a bit of a parallel that has struck me over the last couple of months as she's been getting ready for this and then going and doing the shootout. Is my son back in 2006, the end of the 2006 season, leading into 2007, also got invited to the Mazda Shootout, where he went off to that year it was at Buttonwillow, California, and after his only 2 years of racing sports cars and getting up to speed, which is where Emy is at as well, and from the Spec Miata class here locally, and where we did as well, and then went off and ended up winning part of the prize. So it's and 2006 was the very first year they ever did the shootout. So I feel a bit of closeness with Emy and her family, and really wish them the best. And we've been chatting a little bit off and on, and because of that, I wanted to invite her on here and chat about a little bit about her experiences, and of course we'll talk some data side. Emy, welcome, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Roger. I'm Emy Kissick. Like Roger shared, I cannot give you an engineering and data standpoint on driving, but I can give you a Mazda driver and an amateur racer standpoint on it. So I'm super excited to be here and share with you guys tonight.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do here is we'll possibly take a couple of questions as we get a little bit farther. But we got just some basic topics to kind of go over, get a feel of who Emy is and how she kind of got where she's at, right? So let's jump and kind of start with this slide. Emy shared this with me just a little bit ago, and a magazine article about the Mazda Shootout. Give us a little bit of idea what this is, Emy, and it's pretty cool. I really enjoyed reading it.
The Mazda Shootout is an event put on by Mazda mainly to bring up-and-coming drivers from grassroots racing like SCCA, NASA, amateur racing leagues, even kart racers, into sports car racing, into semi-professional to professional driving. And Mazda chooses nominees. This year there was 50 nominees for Spec MX-5, which is the class I won in. And they choose 12 finalists who get to attend the event, which this year it was at Homestead Miami Speedway. As one of the 12 finalists, I was competing with 4 other girls, 4 total, for 3 scholarships, which at the time we didn't know there was going to be 3 scholarships. We thought that there was only going to be 2 scholarships to race Spec MX-5. But what Mazda is doing is they're giving scholarships to up-and-coming drivers and basically paying for a part, if not a major whole, of their 2025 season. And this is a really amazing opportunity that not really any other manufacturers are doing right now. There is some similar series like Racing Prodigy that are doing similar things with scholarships, but definitely an opportunity that is life-changing for any race car driver. There's Spec MX-5, and then there's also MX-5 Cup. And so they can be confusing because they sound very similar, but they both have Mazda shootouts for both series. MX-5 Cup is more of a professional series. They're fully built race cars with sequential transmissions, and they run on racing slicks. whereas Spec MX-5 is more similar to Spec Miata in the sense where it's a street car converted into a race car, and we run on Toyo RRs just like Spec Miata does in the Northwest. Um, and they still run at the SCCA Hoosier Super Tour. Here I shared this article that was in a magazine from the Women with Drive Summit, which I am currently at in Indianapolis attending, which shows that there was 7 women nominated to be part of the shootout as as a whole. So the Spec MX-5 and the MX-5 Cup shootout. And this just shows like how amazing it was to be nominated as a woman. And it was super cool to see other girls my age competing in it and meeting other girls who have the same passion for driving that I have.
Absolutely. The to kind of step back just a little bit, let's go back a little bit in your history and how you got to where you're at. What's your background in cars, and then moving on maybe to a little bit of the racing side? How did you first get this love of, because it's hard work, right? This is a tough industry, right? And hard work. And how did you get the love to go out and work with cars and get ready for this?
Well, I'll share with you all. I never came from a racing family. I never grew up racing go-karts. I didn't even really know like sports cars, what race cars were until I was like 12 or 13 years old. So racing is a relatively new thing for me, especially in my family. But I always had a love for mechanics, and I'm very lucky to have a dad who understands mechanics and who let me work side by side with him in the shop on whatever truck or machinery he was working on. And that gave me a love from a young age for the mechanical side of racing and cars. And so when I got my first project car when I was 14 years old, I bought a Datsun 280Z, and this car was a total rust bucket, but I saved up my money and I bought the cheapest Datsun I could find, and it taught me how to work on cars, and it taught me how engines work and how to change the oil and electrical systems and bodywork and upholstery, like anything about a car, I learned how to work on that car. And I eventually sold it. I don't have the car anymore. I have a different Datsun 280Z now that's not as bad as the first one I had. But that's really where the love for cars started, and having a cute little sports car is any girl's dream, I believe. And
That all makes a lot of sense, but then how did that turn from that into heading to the track, either autocross or wherever it is that you started? How did that change happen?
well, it was a Christmas present from my mother, which I think she
Ah,
somewhat
it's all
regrets at this point because
all
it
her
it
fault.
has snowballed into this. But I did my first driving class in January of 2023. I got a 1 day sport driving class as a Christmas present, and I drove a little rental car. It was my first time ever really at a racetrack before. And I got I have an instructor in the car, and here's how you do the skid pad drills. Here's how a rear-wheel drive car handles. It understeers, it oversteers, don't hit the cones. I struggled with not hitting the cones.
A lot happening real fast, right?
A lot happening for sure, but I came away from that first day of driving with an addiction. I was infected with the disease that is race car driving, and I don't know if I had a natural talent at it or if I just wanted it so badly that I would do anything to learn how to do it better. And I went back after that day begging my parents, please let me go back to the racetrack. Please let me learn how to drive solo in the rental cars. Like I loved it. I just loved it. And that spring of 2023 is when I got my racing license. I was invited to do a racing class, and this was all at Performance Racing School up in Roger and I's home territory, the Pacific Northwest. Kent, Washington is where the racing school is at Pacific Raceways, and my home track. I learned how to drive, and eventually Spec Miata happened.
And Don was your coach, right?
Yeah.
It's funny. The I was just sitting here one day working at my desk like I always do, and Don doesn't call me a bunch, but we've chatted occasionally, right? And we know each other certainly. And Don called me out of the blue, and he goes, "Roger, I've got this young lady that is been here at the school a few times, and she really has a deep interest in data as well as driving, but in data. And he asked me if I would take a few minutes to give you a call and chat with you. So it's a small world, right? And that's how we got introduced, is through Dawn. So that's kind of funny. So so you started you got your license, and then okay, now it's time to, you're not going to rent cars forever, obviously, and you gotta get something. You ended up in a Spec Miata. What was that decision process like? I mean, we always hear that, what's the answer to almost any racing question is Miata, right? But how did you end up getting into the Spec Miata side?
The answer is almost always
Exactly.
Miata. Don Kitchby, my coach, and very much helpful in my networking as he connected me with Roger. He also connected me with my Spec Miata coach, Will Schrader. If you're from the Pacific Northwest, most people know Will. And Will found this car for me, and he said, "Well, here's your Spec Miata. Here's your race car. It's, by the way, it's in Las Vegas, and if you don't buy it, I will." And so, obviously, now I had to buy the Spec Miata. And it was the weekend after my racing school. We went and we picked up this little Miata, and it was a bright green little car with yellow stripes, and it was my first real race car. It was actually my first car that actually kind of ran and drove, and I got to work on my Datsun 280Zs. Never really ran and drove. I'll be honest. Maybe that's a reflection on my skills as a mechanic, but or my budget as a mechanic, but having this little Miata, man, it was life changing to own this little car. And I got my racing license, and I competed in my first SCCA race after many, many days of testing. And I had to get a license as a minor. I was under 16 at the time, and it made it all worth it. All the training, all the books I read, like that first Spec Miata race, taking the green flag and taking the checker. It was quite amazing.
A pretty powerful thing, isn't it? And then you started to go through the years. You're only coming up on 2 years into this, right? I mean,
Yeah.
fairly new at this, and your level of performance has grown a lot. You mentioned earlier that you weren't sure if it was natural ability or hard work, and uh, my opinion, clearly both, right? You can have natural ability in this game, and it's important, and there's something there, but without the hard work, it doesn't come in a year and a half, right? So obviously, I think it's a bit of both. But so you did that, and you started to race, and you started to put together more sessions, and all of that with the family's help, obviously, and support, uh, and how has the years gone on, and how has your experience level come?
It's definitely been a steep learning curve, but I wouldn't have been able to do it without my coach, Will, and my mentor, Dawn. And obviously, Roger has been helping me with data, and my parents have been helping me with everything. And I'd say the biggest thing learning in Spec Miata was learning how to work on my own car and manage a race car. It's a lot different than working on a street car. And I gotta thank Will for helping me learn how to work on cars and learning how to manage myself and manage a brand. I started social media. I have an Instagram. It's my name, Emy Kissick, if you want to look it up. Learning how to do that and basically all aspects of racing. I didn't know going into this that I wanted to make a career out of it, but after I started racing, I started driving. It became very obvious to me that this is my passion and I love doing this. And so learning how to be professional and the marketing and business aspect of racing, that was fun to learn. And learning how to swap engines in the Miata, we did that last winter. And there's been a lot of well-rounded working on the car that I've learned.
You do quite a bit of work on the car yourself. I mean, you have that little bit of help with your dad, but you're out there doing the work on the car, right? And you even chatted with me the other day and mentioned that you had a data system that you needed to swap around, and you did all the installation of pulling one data system out of one car and putting it in the other. So you even got a little bit of that background. So there is the driving side of it, and there's a lot of young people that come into this sport and don't do that hard work, and it's the benefits of that will pay off, already are paying off, but will continue to pay off. So you enjoy working on it as much as the driving side, but as you continue to learn, and from now just talking about the track side stuff, on track side, there is such a strong group of Spec Miata racers here in the Northwest. They race hard, they race fast. They travel a bit, and they usually do really well when they travel. So you're up against good competition, but yet a real a fun group to race with, right? Safe to be around, and things like that. How is your learning curve? Have you been moving up that ladder of finishing positions in this tough group here in the Northwest?
Yes, I have. I have been moving up the ladder slowly but surely, and it's been fun to race with everyone. I mean, I'm still racing with the people, and I'm still friends with the people I started racing with in the beginning, even though some people didn't like getting beat by a girl at first. I will share that. It has been a little bit hard to adjust to that, but in the Northwest, people have been really kind and amazing. And I'd say the Pacific Northwest Spec Miata Tour is one of the greatest groups of people to race with.
Yeah, we ran into that as ourselves. Some of the same people that you're racing with now were involved back in the mid 2000s as well. I just want to remind everybody, if you have a question that you'd like to ask, if you'd open up your question and answer box here for those that are here live with us, open that up and type it in there. We will probably be able to sneak that in. The as you've been learning more and more, do you spend a lot of your time on the driving aspect of it, the apexes, and understanding that and working on your braking, or do you work on the preparation and the setup of the car? What is your level of understanding of those two things, and where do you put a lot of your efforts?
I'd say they're both very interdependent. When I'm out on the track and I'm feeling how the car is handling at the apex, at the braking zone, at the carryout, you're feeling understeer, you're feeling oversteer. The car might feel great, or it may be your tires, tire pressures. There's a lot of factors that go into it, especially in a spec racing class. I'd say that learning how to understand the setup of the car, how the car balances, cross weight changes, sway bar settings, the tune of the car in Spec Miata, learning all of those factors is really important to be successful. And I think my mechanical understanding that I learned early on was especially helpful when it came to on-track driving and understanding how to manage the weight of the car.
Yeah, I always talk about that, and I've even actually probably used those terms with you before. But you're managing the platform, right? And then I do strongly believe, and then we'll move on to some other stuff. But if you have that understanding, the mechanical piece of it, then when you're in the car, when you can't make a change anymore, right? You've got a 30-minute race ahead of you, and the car is understeering, and there's nothing you can mechanically do to change that. Now all of a sudden you got to go into the driver mode. Okay, how do I work around that now, right, from that side? And I know your driver coach Will is very good about that in his driving as well. And how is that relationship and the teaching that somebody as skilled and as got as much experience as he has had in this thing? I'm not saying he's old, right? But how has that helped you?
It's been really helpful to learn from Will because he understands the importance of being consistent and being adaptable. Especially in Spec Miata, like you could get hit on the start and have a tie rod be bent and still want to finish your race. You have to adapt to the way the car is you're handling constantly throughout the race. And you're going to encounter things in racing that you can't predict, and you have to know how to be calm in the moment and handle them. And I think Will does a really great job of teaching me, like, you can't predict everything, and you have to be ready and making smart decisions on the racetrack. Don't put your car in a gap that's not safe, and learn how to notice whether a pass is worth it or not, and the strategy behind the racecraft. Will has lots of racecraft experience, and it's been really great to learn from him about how to interact with the other cars around you.
Without a doubt, and that's the hardest part. That's the last thing that always comes in motorsports, right? Is the racecraft thing, and Will is obviously sharing that with you. We did have a question that does tie together right about with where we are here. Sometimes I save those for later, but I will maybe even translate a little bit in a different way. But Alan asked the question, what is something that doesn't translate well between that analytic mind thinking about it ahead of time setup, and then while you're out on the and the experience behind the wheel while you're driving? What have you had any struggles on any areas? Maybe it's handling, maybe it's how you actually drive the car, that you thought was going to be one way and you kind of prepared for it, and it doesn't really show itself when you're actually out driving the car.
I'd say that, like, the biggest thing that doesn't carry over well is it's kind of two different mindsets for me. Like when I get in the car, it's driver mindset. It's helmet on. It's I'm thinking about the next corner. I'm visualizing the next corner constantly. Like I'm seeing ahead of me on the track. I'm not thinking about, what happened last corner. Like, oh, why was my lap delta 2/10 slower or 2/10 faster? I'm not thinking about that while I'm driving. I'd say I use the term flow state. A lot of people just say while they're driving, everything comes subconsciously to them. And I'd say that's true for me. The reason why we have data and video is really helpful because after the race, we can go over that with that analytical mindset and look at, oh, well, this lap, why was I 2/10 slower? And why did this corner feel different? And when I do it differently, how can I get better? I'd say in the car and outside of the car, it's definitely two different mindsets for
And
me at least.
yeah, when you're so busy in the car, especially when you only have a couple of years of experience, and the longer you go, the more that you can actually start to merge those together, is what I understand. It's been a long time since I drove anything that at that rate, but yeah, interesting though. And let's before we jump into the data and the video side, which obviously we're going to go to, let's talk a little bit more about the Mazda Shootout and the process that to put you where you are now, right? That we started to begin to chat a little bit more. But what are the how did you find out that you were going to be part of the shootout? Did you have to apply for it? Did somebody have to apply? Did you just get a phone call? How did you get involved with it?
So they say that you have to be nominated for the Mazda shootout, but I found it was extremely helpful to be in touch with people at Mazda beforehand. So I had been emailing with the series director for Spec MX-5 and a manager at Mazda Motorsports since about, I'd say, May or April of 2024. So I spent most of the season over the summer emailing once a month just with little updates like I started with who I am, what my vision is, who I want to be. And I talked about my Spec Miata racing. I talked about my coaching, my experience, my values. And I'd say that kind of is what got me my nomination, other than knowing people. Racing is a huge networking community.
Yep.
Everyone knows everyone in racing, it seems like. It's a very small community when you think about it. And so knowing people that know other people is really helpful. And really not making enemies and being friendly with everyone. And like I said earlier, representing your brand well is really helpful. And
Yeah.
then go ahead.
Yeah. It is a small world. And everybody, it's funny, the farther I get into this and the deeper I go, it's only like two layers different between you and somebody that you'd never really know in the real world, right? But somebody knows them, right? It is kind of it is kind of a funny world that way. What are your thoughts as when that started to happen and you got the word that you were going to be included into this? What is that when you started to get nervous? Is that when the weight of that started to happen? You're going to be now involved in this Mazda shootout. Maybe you can give a little bit more of how you found out, but then okay, now you found out. Okay, now the preparation really starts, or what were your thoughts at that point?
I'm kind of glad I was really too busy to be nervous at the time I sent out. It was early to mid-October, and they sent out an email announcing that you were going to be nominated and that you were to submit a video, a resume, and a driver bio. And so I was in school at the time. I'm a high school senior. I'm 17. And so I was doing my schoolwork and I was also planning out my script for this video that I was going to submit and writing my driver bio and accumulating a resume of all my races that I'd been in. And so I was excited. I was skeptical, I'll say, but I was really excited. I knew that I was up against some tough competition, but I knew that I had a chance and that I was just going to give it my best effort. And then what the results were what the results were. I knew that I put in my best effort. And so I submitted my video, my resume, and my bio. And about 2 weeks later, I got the email saying that I was one of the 12 finalists. And they actually announced it on a video call, which was super exciting to hear. And just I think that's when the nervousness started.
Yeah, now it's time to get serious, right?
Yep,
You
the
you
real work
you
started.
put in a lot of work ahead of that, obviously, to be able to get in there. Networking is a big part of it, but on track and results and all the rest of that. So then you it was at Homestead, Florida, right?
Yep.
And the so you head down there, and boy, what a whirlwind that must have been, right? All the stuff that was happening there, and stuff coming at you with coaches, and all the efforts that were going around that. What are your thoughts? What some of your memories from that experience?
I'd say it was just joy and excitement to be there. I was so happy to be there, and I felt so lucky to have this amazing opportunity and just so excited to be there and meet people my age, meet the coaches, meet everyone at Mazda. And I'd never been to a big oval track before. And so Miami Homestead Speedway, they have NASCAR there. And we're driving and there's palm trees and it's 80 degrees out. And this is when it's pouring rain at home in November. And we drive down this road and there's the raceway appears with the big buildings, and the banking was huge, this stadium. And I'd never really seen anything like it coming from like Portland and Pacific Raceways and all the Northwest tracks. And that was just the first look of the experience was amazing. And then getting there and really getting to work with the Mazda coaches. And I've done data in my Spec Miata, and I do most of my own data. I don't really have a data coach to help me in Spec Miata at the time. But being able to get out of the Spec MX-5 car and having video data, and you're looking at it and they give you things to improve on it. It made it kind of easy to improve because the coaches were telling you what to work on. But obviously you had to apply it. And so it was a very cool experience. I've never coming from amateur racing in the Northwest, I'd never experienced anything like that. And it's almost hard to describe because everything was so new to me, especially driving a new car, a Spec MX-5 car. Some people say they're similar to a Spec Miata. I would disagree, other than the fact that they're both Miatas, basically.
They have the same nameplate on them, right? But
Yeah.
other than that, there is a bit of difference. But the so you go out there, and you just said something there that intrigued me, and the level is just going to grow as you go. But you said that you'd never had that kind of feedback and that kind of instruction and help. There's at that level, right? And where these people are there to do nothing but to help you, and everybody else at the time, obviously. Getting that kind of feedback, what is from somebody that you'd gotten it from your coaches and and from Don and from Will and some of the folks that you'd worked with in the past, but it's different when you leave the friend level and you go to the professional level and the feedback is there. Were you able to immediately accept that? Some people go through an area where they feel like it's you're getting feedback and it's almost feeling like it's a little bit negative at times, but you're able to get past that fairly quickly and begin to accept it and take it and run with it.
I think one of the attributes that I have in my personality that has really helped me is I love hearing feedback. I love hearing the criticism and the critique, whether it be negative or positive. I really appreciate hearing that because I know that it's there to make me better, and it's up to me to interpret how I take it, and I choose to take it in a good way, and I choose to take what I find will be helpful and useful. And so that's really how I weed out any like negative criticism. It doesn't bother me. I think I'm at the WIMNA Summit right now, so we've been talking a lot about women in motorsports. And they say that a lot of men can't take feedback the same way women do. I'm no psychologist, but I've heard that, and I think that's something that's made me more successful in the taking of the feedback in the professional environment.
I think there's got to be some truth to that, right? People are sharing that with you, and I think there's some truth to that. But it's but the harder you push and the harder you go, the harder that the feedback gets, it will become it gets harder sometimes to take it, totally, right. And they're asking you to do things that just doesn't make sense sometimes. But it's always great to have that open mind and be able to, okay, well, what maybe not everything they said is perfectly in tune with what I want, but boy, I can pick out these 4 or 5 things, right? And yeah, that makes sense to me. And if I do that, I think I can do better at that. The when you were getting the feedback, not getting super detailed into the data or the video, but what kind of stuff do you like to look at when you and what's your process? If you have data and video, you get done and you get out of the car and you're going to sit down and you're going to start to look at some stuff. What is What's your kind of your workflow as you start to look at things when it comes to the data and the video?
I'm very much a visual learner, and so I love to see the video. I can kind of remember during my session. Sometimes I'll put my hand up in the video if I want to see when I did something or when I saw something wrong. And so it's like a visual cue for me when I'm rewatching the video, like, oh, what did I do there? I just put my hand up. Um, I'll see.
Or somebody just made you mad on the track and you're stopping and
Yeah.
going, no, yeah, no, probably not.
I try not to do
Exactly.
that. Um, But then once I've watched my video and I have a couple ideas of places where I'm being inconsistent or where I want to improve or where I think I could get more speed, that's when I go to the data and I look. A lot of times I'll use the throttle position and the brake pressure along with my fastest lap and like my slower laps to look, hey, where am I inconsistent here? And that's another place where like the segment times are really helpful to have. You can see your fastest segment times and then how far off you were your other laps. And that's only when I'm looking at me by myself. When I have
Interesting.
another,
Interesting that you're spending a lot of time, and it's probably the right thing to be doing at this point. But you're certainly you're looking for speed and lowering lap times and raising speed, but you're doing it chasing it from an inconsistency spot. That's an interesting way, we share a lot here with learning styles. We've talked a lot on these webinars of and I'm going to tell you you're far from alone. That as a matter of fact, it's my natural style as well. Is a lot of people as they're getting into the data, it's the video first and the data second. It's the video to find the area because that there's that mental tie with what you just saw, and you oh that's right, turn six. I am just I can't. It just doesn't feel right. I may even hit it right every time, but I'm not comfortable, right? And sometimes it's not even visual. It's just what you remember from an hour ago when you were in the car, and then you go straight to the data and start looking at turn six or whatever it happens to be, and to start to push that together. It's interesting that that's your process as well. Once you start to do that, have you found that you're able to find the inconsistencies fairly quickly and then turn those into speed gains?
yeah, I've talked to quite a few, I think more than two of the Northwest Spec Miata guys who are very experienced, very good race car drivers have told me this. I've asked them, they don't use data. And I'm like, how do you improve? How do you get faster? How do you stay consistently if you're not using data? Like how do you know what you want to do? And they said, well, I know in my mind what feels right and what feels wrong. And nine times out of 10, 95% of the time or more, almost 100% of the time, what I feel is right or wrong is supported by the data. And so these drivers who are amazing drivers, placing drivers, can feel what's right or wrong about their driving. And then if they were to check it with data, which they have in the past, it's shown that they were right about how they felt. And so having that sense of what feels right in the car to me, that's why I like to look at the video first because I can know looking at my driving in the corner how I felt in the car. Like, why didn't this corner quite feel right? Like, what could I change to make it feel better? And I'm very much a visual driver and also driving by feel. And I struggle with sim racing because there's a lot less to feel than there is in the real car.
Interesting that you said that, and I'd like to just kind of even back up one more time there and talk about that one because it's the data versus experience. You talked about a couple of drivers that you chat with about their feel in the car, and I always think of and it'll be interesting to hear what you say is data and video is a shortcut to that experience that they have spent years fine
Yeah.
tuning and getting the feel of, and maybe it's taken 15 or 20 years to get that, where people that are using data in a little bit earlier in their motorsports career can really speed up that process. And then now you're, instead of the feeling is telling you what's right or wrong, the data is telling you, okay, oh, that's the feeling that I understand now why I'm feeling that is because of some of these things that are maybe I'm doing a little bit wrong. What's your feeling on that, on the data and the video being a bit of a shortcut to get yourself to that experience level faster?
It's definitely a shortcut and the data doesn't lie. You can't lie to yourself
Yeah.
with the data, that's for sure. And it does make it a lot quicker because it's not trial and error and it's not years of just inching towards the limit very closely, but not going over the limit, not crashing. It's very mathematical and it's very accurate, which is what makes it important.
And then there's you and I have chatted a little bit about, some of the data and places to look. And we've shared a lot on these webinars here, but that some people, when they first start out, what you always hear is you've got this corner that, boy, everybody wants to try to go flat out through X corner, right? And that's the big goal, is to get this super high speed corner flat first. And the data taught me fairly early, when I was racing with my son, doing all the data work with him, that it's just the opposite of what we should be focusing on. We need to focus on the low speed corners. You spend more time in the low speed corner, and if you're 2 or 3 miles per hour off in that, you are 3 or 4 car lengths off coming off the corner. Where at 115 miles an hour in a high speed kink, and you're trying to go 2 or 3 miles an hour faster through there with the risk being a little bit higher, and that's only 1% of the speed gain going out the other side. And it's really important to be focusing on the slower corners first and work your way up. Obviously, the slowest corner with the longest straightaway after maybe being the first one you'd really check into. What are your thoughts about some of that?
I think that prioritizing and using data to prioritize when you're learning a track or trying to get faster at a track is really important. Like you said, Roger, you spend more time in the slower corner. And in my experience, at least at most of the tracks I race at, not all of them, a lot of the slower corners lead onto the straightaway. And those corners that lead onto the straightaway are known to be the most important.
Yeah, your friend and mine, Will Schrader, asked the question: what would you say are the top 3 things new drivers should focus on?
That depends on what you're going for. If you're focusing on just having fun driving, I'd say just focus on being consistent, not wrecking your car, and having fun. Always have fun at the racetrack. I always have fun at the racetrack, and so that's just a general one. But if you're focused on improving quickly, I'd say data is a huge thing new drivers should be focusing on if they want to improve quickly. And also working on your marketing outside of racing is something that new drivers should be working on, building a brand. And obviously, the third thing would be getting up to speed and just being good in your race car is important with that well-rounded driving aspect.
I'll add a little bit to that, and to what Will said, but as long as, in my opinion, you can be slower, but as long as there's constant improvement, right?
Mhm.
And if you can see it in the data, or you can see it in the lap times, or you can see it in the video, or whatever it happens to be, but as long as there's constant improvement, yeah, we want big improvements, but the constant improvement part, to me, is the thing to really focus on, right? And again, yes, what is your end goal? Are you just out there having a good time, and not wreck the car, and stay away from other people maybe, or whatever? Maybe that's one thing, but when you actually get into competitive motorsports, just constant improvement, right? Either in helping get the car set up correctly, or helping on your own driving, or helping on the vehicle health part and not beating the car to death, and those kind of things, right? It's just this constant improvement thing. Uh, would you agree with that?
For sure, yes. Yeah, making little by little improvement is better than making a huge improvement and crashing your car. That's for sure. I think everyone knows that, and that's what I mean by consistency. At least for me, when I say consistently, it's, consistently one day at a time. Like, what can I do today to improve my driving just a little bit? It doesn't have to be huge, but what's one thing I could do today to work on improving myself and my driving? Is it staying hydrated, or is it networking, connecting with new people? Is it making a social media post and thanking my sponsors? It could be any little thing that's not exactly an on-track thing.
It's so much more than just being on the track and driving. Certainly, you've
For
you've
sure.
talked about looking at your own data, and you've probably shared some data with some other folks as well. You're about to start this season next year on the Mazda amateur team. I don't remember the exact terminology for that. I'm sorry, but you're going to have a couple of teammates, right? And part of that will clearly being sharing of video and sharing of data. And have you shared data a lot, and then taken it to that next level, where instead of looking for inconsistencies, now looking for that corner, and that I'm uncomfortable, and okay, how much am I losing? I'm losing 3 or 4 tenths there. What can I do? What are they doing? Sharing of data. How much have you done with that?
I haven't been able to share data with my Spec MX-5 teammates yet, unfortunately. I do look forward to doing that this season, though. I have been able to share data with some of my Spec Miata friends in the Northwest, and it's definitely a different mindset when you're looking at the data to improve your own consistency in your own lap times versus what is this other person doing better than me? And I think that looking at the GPS speed, at least for me, on those comparisons is the first thing I look at because it's really obvious to see those dips at the lowest part of the corners, the min speed, to see your mile per hour differences. A lot of times when I compare speed, it'll be one corner where I'm way overslowing. And so just by seeing those mile per hour speeds, you know that you're either on the wrong line turning in, which is usually unlikely because you can see from the video that you're not doing that. And so you'll know that it's a braking issue and that you're over braking or you're braking too early for that corner and you're just not carrying enough speed in. And then the exits of the corner, being able to see like when you got on throttle, having a throttle position sensor is important. And so that'll affect your overall straightaway speed at the end of the straightaway or the exit of the corner.
That's one of the things that's so fantastic about the NC spec MX-5 Cup cars that you'll be driving, that they have the ECU data that's being fed into the data system, and you're getting a lot of those channels that you're really interested in getting, right, that are going to help you. And that series is some, we at AIM work together with the series there, where we are watching a lot of data files and watching for technical compliance issues. So you'll be sharing a lot of data and a lot of video. It'll be interesting to get your feedback as time goes on, as you learn that whole piece a little bit more. What is your schedule for next year? Where are you guys going to be traveling? You've talked about, you've ran just West Coast stuff so far, and I think just Northern California and Washington and Oregon. Where are you going to go? What kind of tracks are you going to get to go visit?
So, other than going to Miami for the shootout, I've only ever raced on the West Coast before. And with my Mazda scholarship, I will be racing at Road Atlanta in March, VIR in April, Mid Ohio in May, Road America in June, and then Road America again for the runoffs in September and early October. And so this is a lot. 5 race weekends is pretty exciting for me at all new tracks that I haven't been to yet. And I am also going to be competing in a couple of the West Coast Hoosier Super Tour races, I believe Buttonwillow and the Portland race. I'll be renting a car privately for those races.
Well, there's certainly the West Coast stuff here, but the four you listed there are spectacular tracks, right? So I look forward to hearing what your how much fun you have at Road Atlanta, the very first one. It was the year that my son got the ride as well. We did have one race at a street circuit around the Houston Superdome as a IndyCar support race, and then because that didn't really count. I mean, it counted as a race, obviously, but it was a temporary track. But then his very first ever actual on track bigger race in the series was Road Atlanta, and and just a spectacular place, right? You're gonna have so much fun at the four tracks that you listed there. What as you go, what is you know, goals are hard to say right now. I mean, you're fairly new at, you just won this thing, and you're off and running, right? And you what are you hoping for as far as goals, as far as what you learn, where you finish, you people you meet, and the tracks you get to learn on. What's important to you for the coming season?
Well, my biggest goal for this season is to have the correct mindset. Mental aspect of racing is really important to me. And like you said earlier, just having little by little consistent improvement. If I can just end the season with having enough improvement throughout the season and having fun at every race and enjoying learning and the learning process, that would just be fantastic for me. I know I went into the shootout with a learning mindset and a growth mindset, and that helped me immensely perform at my highest. And if I can perform at my highest and have a growth mindset during the Spec MX-5 season, that would make me very happy.
You have a lot of opportunity, obviously, which will be really fun. For this season, obviously you're gonna learn a ton, just as you just mentioned. okay, you're learning and you're continuing to build. What is your longer term motorsports goals? What do you hope to be doing in 5 years from now?
A lot of people, when they're asked this questions, a lot of drivers will know, like, oh, I want to race IMSA or I want to be in NASCAR ARCA series. I honestly, I'm not going to narrow it down for myself, and I'm really open to any possibility in motorsports. I love driving, and I'm not really worried about what kind of car it is, though. I really have enjoyed racing sports cars, and I do hope I get more time in sports cars in the eventually more time in sports cars, possibly endurance racing. I have not done an endurance race yet, though I do have on my schedule tentatively for the 2025 season. So that'll be exciting to try out and see if I like that. And I don't know about Formula cars. A lot of people say Formula cars are hard to get into, and I never grew up racing go-karts, but if I'm given the opportunity to race something or drive something, I'm gonna take that opportunity because it's always an amazing experience.
Absolutely, and you're fairly new at this still, so your mindset probably hasn't, you know, you haven't had 15 years to dream about where you want to go. So it's you 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 love the driving side of it, but you and I have chatted a little bit about, maybe even other parts of the motorsports world as well. So you have interests in a wide variety, although the driving is always the passion for almost everybody, right? The I did have a question here from Alan that as we kind of are starting to wind it up, what was the biggest challenge transitioning from a learning focused track environment to the competitive side? You went to the driving schools and you learned a little bit, and I know you do some sim racing stuff as well. That wheel and wheel environment as a driver experience, how is that, and how is that data interpreted?
Transitioning from learning to competitive environment. Well, I feel like at least in Spec Miata in the Northwest, it's always been learning for me with my coach. And yes, it is competitive, and yes, oh, I wish I could have gotten that pass right at the finish line, and I wish I could have won that race, or I wish I could have done better. But the learning is what helps you get competitive, because the more you learn and the better you get as a driver, at least for me, growing is how I get better and how I improve with my mindset. And then going to the shootout and being in that competitive environment, that was definitely a change for me because it was very intense not being amateur racing anymore. There was a lot of drivers who were very hardcore and were they wanted to win very badly and they were there to win versus my mentality of I'm here to learn and I'm here to have fun and I'm here to do the best I can do with my skill set. And so that definitely was a transition for me, but I'm learning how to deal with it and how to deal with kind of like the pressure of that competitive environment. I wouldn't say that it causes anxiety or stress, but I definitely say it's a different feeling than my community back home, where everyone's there to have fun and enjoy a weekend at the racetrack versus going to a more competitive series such as Spec MX-5 where people are really there to win and they want to win.
That will be a change, obviously, but I think that's a neat. I'm assuming that will be a step that can be made. Obviously, you already understand that it's theirs, which makes the step easier to make. The one question that you say some things every once in a while, and it makes me think about it. But the mental versus physical. There's there's the physical side. You don't seem to struggle at all with that. I went up and watched a race at Pacific Raceways that you were in, and my wife and I went up there and we enjoyed meeting all of our old friends and meeting you guys for the first time. And I watched you race out there. I think it was a 30 or 35-minute race, and it wasn't super hot, but it was warm enough. And you got out of the car and you looked better than most of the folks that you were racing against as far as your physical positioning. The so what about that physical versus the mental aspects of motorsports? It is such high level on both sometimes. How do you rate those, and where do you think you fit into that?
Physically wise, I try to go to the gym about 3 times a week, if not 4 times a week. I incorporate driving focus exercises such as like neck and core focus strength, as well as like lots of cardio training because race car driving is cardio. My heart rate is about 120 beats per minute in the race car to 130. I try to work out within that range, if not more, to train for the physical aspect of racing. And mentality wise, I do work with a mental performance coach. I'm going to be completely honest about that. Some drivers are a little ashamed to admit that they work with like a mental coach, which I don't know if that's ego, but I have found it immensely helpful to be able to talk to someone about breathing exercises and being calm in the car and being able to reframe and refocus thoughts. And one of the biggest things about race car driving is getting distracted. If you get distracted in the car, you lose your mental focus. You lose that subconscious edge that you have while you're in flow state. And being able to reframe and refocus your mindset and be constantly focused on the next corner and what's happening next and looking ahead and having your eyes up. That mental aspect of racing is how you succeed and how you get to the next level.
The mental aspect of motorsports is higher than the physical side, frankly. So for you to be doing that and for others to push that down the importance scale is at their own risk. So you keep on doing what you do because it's that's an important part of what you do. If that part is working fine, the rest of it kind of follows along fairly well, in my opinion. So the the only other thing I'd like to share, we're gonna land this plane, as they say, but the Sean Hedrick, another Northwest guy, and is a big part of the Mazda side of this, was posted a message up here in the chat. I think I'll read that as we go back to sharing my screen and kind of closing this one. Sean mentions that I was fortunate enough to be one of the shootout judges, and can tell you that Emy exceeded all expectations on multiple levels: driving, personality, and on-track performance, taking driving coaching direction well, off-track communication, and other areas. She worked very hard and it showed, and she impressed everyone, enough for Mazda to put together a third scholarship, which you mentioned as they started. So I thank Sean for adding that, giving the context of where you're at and how you got here. So I appreciate that very much, Sean, and I wanted to share that with everybody. He sent that to just the host and the panelists, and I don't think he meant to. I think he meant to write that for everybody. So thank you, Sean, and a huge amount of goodwill towards you and everybody that's been around you, helping you train, and your parents, obviously, and everybody else. So thank you for that. Let me share my screen, and we will start to kind of close this one down a little bit. Let's share that. I'd like to thank Emy for coming here. She takes some time out of a very busy couple of days that she's in the middle of there at the Women's Summit. So I'm glad you're able to. You probably had to rush dinner to get back to the hotel in order to do this for us, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this. This video, just like all the rest that we do, will be placed up on YouTube very quickly, within an hour or so, and can be watched by folks that want to watch it. So please share it if you were here live and watched it, and you think that there was some value for some young racers that were in your area. Please share this and let them know that this is out there. It'll be out on our YouTube site, and it's joining almost 270 videos that we have up there. Very technical ones, and then, as I mentioned earlier, we do these interviews and discussion topics with folks, and those are always interesting as well. We love the technical ones, but we like to kind of break off and do some of these every once in a while. It's always fun. AIM is a customer support company that happens to sell racing electronics. Is something that we like to say, and while we may not be at any large events this weekend, but we will be at the PRI show. I have another slide on that here in just a moment. If you have any questions about any of your hardware, your software needs, I'll give you contact information for myself here in just a moment on the software side, certainly, and the 800 number. And when we do get back out to the track, and we'll be starting on that very quickly. I think the following weekend after PRI, we have some indoor stuff that we'll be at. Look for all the folks in the AIM vans and the AIM shirts and the AIM backpacks and walking around, and that's what we're here to help you with. And we just love helping folks and getting the most out of their data investments. So look for that. We are at the PRI show, as I mentioned just before we started recording. I fly out early in the morning, head for the PRI show. We start the show on the 12th, and this may be watched later by folks, but hopefully you are able to come to the PRI show, if not this year, in the future years, it's just a wonderful place for folks that enjoy motorsports. If you happen to be there this coming weekend, we're at booth 3257 in the Yellow Hall. Make sure you drop by and say hi. Emmy will probably drop by at some point during the weekend and say hi as well. So, looking forward to that. I'll be out of here early in the morning. So, the next AIM Sports webinar, we do these every second Tuesday of the month and every last Tuesday of the month. The very next one happens to be New Year's Eve, so we won't have an official one. But if you click on the link, you may find us here having a great discussion and just a very laid back, informal webinar as well. But if you the next official one where we're going to have a chat, Tuesday, January 14th. We'll be talking about all the hardware and all the information that we gathered from this coming PRI show. So we'll have my co-workers Robbie Yeoman and Brick Talley will be joining me, and we'll be chatting about all that we learned at the PRI show and some of the new hardware that you might see. So looking forward to that. Some contact information. Obviously my email address, most of you have that are here. And if you have any technical questions you'd like, and Emy has shared her Instagram and her Facebook social media information there. Emy, tell us a little bit about what you do on Instagram and Facebook and how you kind of handle things, and as we kind of close this one up.
So my Facebook is newer. I just started it recently. But my Instagram I've had for a while, and I post about my sponsors, and I also post about race weekends and events I'm going to. I have tons of pictures of my car, so if anyone wants to see the Spec Miata or the Spec MX-5 I've been driving, that's a great place to look. My email is also emykissick@gmail, same way it's spelled there. If you want to contact me, feel free to reach out. I love answering questions.
Perfect. And there's your mom and dad there in beautiful Florida. Yeah, I
Yep.
heard you had a little bit of rain, didn't you? Didn't a couple little rain showers go through during the shootout? Pretty late.
It was supposed to rain, and I was actually looking forward to it because coming from the Pacific Northwest, I love driving in the rain. But it did not rain. It was
Uh,
just really hot and humid.
yeah, yeah. Welcome to Florida. And I've been to Homestead as well, and I was shocked from watching some of the big races that I'd watched on there, and then when you actually get there to see how much banking is actually in the track, was amazing to me. Same thing with Indianapolis. I was amazed how much more banking than I thought it was going to be. So I appreciate everybody showing up and joining us. Thank you, Emy, for taking the time. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Roger, for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you to all my coaches, mentors, supporters, my friends, and of course, my family who have helped me get here. I really appreciate it.
Perfect. Thanks. And Emy, we'll see you in the next couple of days. Look forward to it. Thanks everybody
Bye.
for coming, and we will see you January 14th, I think is what I said. I think is what it was. Yep, January 14th. We'll see you the next time here. Look forward to seeing all of you when we talk about what we found out at the PRI show. Everybody, talk to you soon, and have a great couple of weeks. Great holidays. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Bye.